Welcome to the ACT podcast. My name is Lizzie Harewood, and I'm joined as usual by Jo Boorne, who is our Admin and Development Officer.
Hello.
So Jo, great to see you. How are you doing?
All right. We've had an exciting week, haven't we?
We certainly have. We have been getting the latest edition of the ACT journal ready, and I think it's off to print now, isn't it?
It is with the printers. It will be arriving very shortly, but give us a bit of an update. What is the journal?
So the ACT journal is a publication that we produce 3 times a year, so every term. And it is a benefit for members only. So if you're listening to this and you're not a member, sorry to say, you won't be getting a journal through your letterbox. It's a publication that is usually themed around a particular issue in education. And we include articles that obviously are from a Christian lens. So we've had lots of different themes in our previous editions. So we've had editions that have been centered around further education and higher education, around technology and smartphones in school, around the incidence of the quiet revival, the prevalence of Christian unions in schools. And obviously we have other updates as well, what's going on in the world of education. We have a space for book reviews, and we have our prayer diary, which I know our members really do appreciate because they can pull it out and they can look and see, this week, these are the prayer points, and it just helps to guide people who are committed to praying for education through the weeks, gives really clear themes, issues, specific prayer points that they can use if they want to. Yeah, that's what the journal is. It's not meaty. It's not going to take you a few days to get through it. But it's nice. I know people appreciate it, sitting down with a coffee maybe at the weekend and just, looking through.
We do hear regularly, don't we, that it is such a blessing to our members. And it's been published for a huge number of years. And all our back copies are on our community platform. So if anyone did want to become a member, then they are accessible on the community platform as PDFs, aren't they? And
I think the other thing I'd just quickly say is that we do also have members that write for us. So either we'll approach members that maybe have a specialism in a particular area, or we also invite contributions from members if they've got something they want to respond to, or they want to feedback on, or just an issue that they are particularly passionate about. We do invite guest contributors or members to contribute as well. Yeah.
This latest journal is a topic that is particularly close to my heart. So I'm really glad that you've covered this, and I think done it so well. It's focusing on the central crisis, isn't it?
It certainly is, yeah. And there is a reason that we've chosen to use that language. I think the more that I look into this and read up about it, bearing in mind I have no extraordinary training in special educational needs myself, apart from my BGC. I spent 2 weeks in a special school and obviously then taught in mainstream schools, and saw the kind of the decline in the ability of schools to cope with the increasing demand and the increasing prevalence of special educational needs. And then just looking at some of the statistics around the issues, it really is something that beggars belief, really, in terms of how schools are struggling to keep up with what's happening. So we just thought, it's time we really do think about this, and think about it really with the Imago Dei at the centre, the child being made in the image of God, with all the complexity, what that means in terms of their additional needs that could be physical, could be emotional, often increasingly are to do with neurodiversity as well. So it is one of those things that is a hot topic in education and always will be until there's some sort of resolution.
So it is a hot topic in education. Talk me through, why is it such a hot topic? It's difficult in so many ways, isn't it?
It is, and I think special educational needs looks very different depending on from where you're standing. So everyone's got a perspective on why children seem to be suffering so much or struggling so much with certain needs and what the solutions are. So we've tried to come at this from a range of viewpoints, knowing that there will not be one answer, that this is a complex problem, and that everyone is fighting their corner So you'll get parents who are trying to navigate the system. And obviously, Jo, in a minute, I know you'll share a little bit about your experience. So we've included a testimony of parents who are Christians and also a trained teacher navigating the system for their own child in an incredibly tough context. We've got the perspective of classroom teachers and professionals on the front line working exclusively with children, teenagers in this case, with special educational needs. We've got the perspective of a Senko and how being a Christian makes a difference to performing that particular role in a school. And then we've also got a medical perspective from a pediatrician who used to diagnose autism and other learning needs. And it's a hot topic, as you said, because everyone's impacted in some way. Systems are under an immense amount of pressure. We heard, didn't we, the deficit that councils are in at the moment is unmanageable. And actually, the government have announced that they're going to wipe 90% of council send deficit. They're just going to write off that financial burden, which I suppose is a great thing. But it really does impact many of us, and it's impacting our churches as well. Churches are increasingly thinking about how they can meet the needs of children and adults as well in their congregations, particularly with those that are neurodivergent and perhaps have sensory needs, but also emotional needs as well, which I think are also becoming more and more prevalent. So, yeah, I think, Jo, you have a particular sort of bird's eye view, don't you? You have a particular lens because you are mum. And I'm thinking about this very much, I know, from the conversations we have almost every day about how the morning's been, what the latest kind of trial or stress is. What would you say? What's your kind of take on this crisis?
So I'm really glad that you asked Vicky and Lee McMunn to do an article for us for the journal from the parents' perspective, having been on the Panorama programme themselves and having watched that, it's so helpful to say as a parent, yes, this is what I experienced. This is why it's so hard for me. And I have a huge sympathy for the situation with schools. It is so difficult to be able to meet the needs of our children who are really struggling. And as a parent, it's really hard to meet the needs of a child who's struggling. But now, the situation that we're in with our child is I'm really excited by, because actually seeing the practical help being put in place for him at school is having such a massive impact on our family. Things are going so much better. It's so wonderful to see. And so I'm really excited by probably too excited, to be honest, but excited by the article that came out today about a provision that the government are going to be putting in with the SEND reforms. I think it could have such an amazing impact in school.
So there's been lots of announcements recently, haven't there? And I know your son has an EHCP, and the government have announced the criteria for being able to get that is perhaps going to be made more for the severe end of SEND. But to counterbalance that, there's going to be apparently more of a push for school environment and curriculum to be made inclusive so that kids with SEND can learn well in the mainstream setting. And we know that there's more that we need to learn about this. And there's going to be a white paper which will set out some of these wider reforms. And I know families are very anxious to hear that. But some little bits of information have been revealed. And today I was learning that as part of the drive to make schools inclusive by design, so not just relegated to a specialist unit, but that every secondary school have an inclusion base, somewhere that pupils can go, where they can access that targeted support, perhaps where they can go and just have a bit of time out if they need it, if perhaps they're overstimulated or if they're not coping emotionally or managing to regulate themselves. So I think that's a really positive thing. I mean, perhaps I'm feeling a little bit less excited in that I worry this could just be a sticking plaster. And there's so much more that needs to be done at looking at the underlying sort of causes and triggers and how we can work well with families. But I know that this is definitely a step in the right direction, 100%. So these support bases, they would be commissioned and funded by individual settings, and then specialist bases, which I think are different. I'm only reading this from the article in Schools Week this morning. They would be commissioned and funded by councils. So obviously the councils, having had some of that debt wiped off, would then have more freedom to use their budgets, not to pay off the issues they've had in the past, but to plough into the specialist bases for the most needy, alongside obviously other specialist provision. Yeah, I think that is really positive. And it's great because when I speak to you, Joe, most days you give me such a different perspective on some of the struggles that students will be having. And I suppose it's the Coke can effect as well, isn't it? When students who are struggling at school are perhaps managing to hold it together to a certain extent at school, when they get home, the Coke can's been shaken all day. And there's an element of truth with all kids. But I expect, especially with children that have special educational needs, that's even more acute, isn't it? So yeah.
Certainly is. But actually, what we're seeing at home is that because the school environment is now so much more nurturing and helpful for him, we're not seeing the big explosions at home like we were. And it's wonderful, really wonderful to see. A real privilege, actually.
Oh, that's so good.
That's not to say life is perfect.
Oh.
We are all still human, living together,
Yeah.
muddling along. But oh my goodness, it's nearly half term. I'm excited.
Oh.
And I guess it's quite a milestone in the school year, isn't it? It's halfway through the academic year.
Yeah.
I'm very aware that actually looking at our podcast kind of statistics behind the scene, we have a few podcasts that are the most listened to.
Oh.
One of them is, I think, probably your first podcast that you recorded, called Stress, Burnout and the Bible. And that's really indicative, isn't it, of actually what a challenging role teachers have.
Absolutely. I think, as you say, teaching has always been a pretty stressful job. And we've learned all the more recently that teachers are struggling to stick it out. The days of having a kind of lifelong career in teaching really are over. I don't say that in a pessimistic way. I say that just looking at the statistics, the average kind of lifespan of a newly qualified teacher is about 5 years, I think, in the profession, not their actual lifespan. And I'm seeing it all around me as well. Christians and those who aren't Christians. A very good friend of mine who was a primary teacher for 20 years left at the beginning of this academic year. And she actually said, "Do you know what? I don't have a job to go to and I don't really care. I can't do this. I physically can't do this for another year. I have to have time out. Otherwise, I'm just going to capitulate." And that is a common experience. There's workload issues, which have always been there. We've heard this week about the increasing behaviour incidents that are increasing in number, but also in severity, and other issues as well that are just compounding this sense of, "Oh, this is getting a bit too much for me now." And yeah, it's sad. And I think, as I said, Christians are not immune to this at all. And they are impacted just as much as anyone else. I would say, yeah, if that's how you're feeling, you're not alone. I don't want to dwell on the negatives. And we need to remember that there are still some immense blessings in being in the teaching profession, and immense opportunities, particularly as Christians, to nurture these little image bearers and to really contribute to the formation of virtue and of character. And it's a great blessing to be able to do that, but it is also hard work. So I would say go and have a listen to that podcast, get in touch if we can be of help. And we would love to hear from you if there's anything we can do even just chat with you, pray with you, and invite you to one of our groups. That would be great as well.
So give us some sort of biblical encouragement if we're feeling that actually life is really tough. We've made it to half term and we want to rest well.
It's a great question. And obviously, we always need to go back to the word of God to feed us. It's that the old adage, if you don't remember every meal you've eaten, but you know that you would have eaten because you're still alive now, because you'd have had food for however many years. And I think it's like that with the Bible. So I would say, if you're listening to this, you're feeling discouraged and tired, go back to the word of God. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about verses that encourage our hearts. And Jesus says, come to me, all who are burdened and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. And it's so true. Sometimes we cannot step away from the physical or emotional exhaustion for longer than weekend or of half term. But long term, there will be something that keeps us going, because Jesus's rest is on a higher plane, isn't it? It's a rest for our soul, not just a physical rest or an emotional rest. It's that rest that ultimately we are safe in his arms, and that he can give us that supernatural energy, not necessarily physical energy, although sometimes he does as well. He is gentle and tender, and he will give us rest for our souls. And I'm afraid we can't really give any quick fixes in terms of making you feel a bit better or making you feel a bit more energized, other than go to Jesus. But if you are really struggling as well, don't be afraid to reach out and even get professional support or speak to someone in your church, because the last thing you want is for someone to keep going because they feel they have to and actually reach a stage of burnout where physically can't go on. Yeah. And if I'm sure that there would be someone in your church or a professional that would love to speak to you if that is the case, or even get in touch with us at ACT. Please know we're also praying for you, because I've been there, and I've burnt out. So I know what it feels like as well.
Thank you, Lizzie. Yeah, that verse, come to me, all who are burdened and weary, and I will give you rest, it really carried me through last year in particular, navigating the SEND system. It's a wonderful, helpful verse. Thank you. So personally, I'm actually quite new to podcasts, and I have to say, I've edited more podcasts than I've listened to. Looking at the statistics behind our podcast again, I've noticed that most people are going onto our website to download a podcast to listen to. And I thought it might be helpful to actually say it's worth considering where you get your music from normally and find our podcast there. So if you listen to Spotify or Amazon Music or Apple Music, or have a look for ACT podcast, and all our catalogue of episodes is there. And whenever we create a new one, which we're aiming to be on a Friday during term time, if you follow our podcast, it will pop up on your phone. You can listen to it on the way home or plan for a Saturday morning with a cup of tea. Wouldn't that be nice? Put your feet up. Now, big date for the diary, 10th of October.
Oh, what's happening then?
I'm so looking forward to it. Our ACT conference. But where's it going to be, Lizzie?
Good question, because there's been a slight change of plan for various reasons that we don't really need to go into. We are going to be holding our annual conference, our Living for Jesus in Education conference, in the nation's capital in London at Fulham Boys School. So very excited about it. It's also going to coincide with the publication and the launch of our Living for Jesus in Education booklet, which we're making in collaboration with the Evangelical Alliance and primarily the Lawyers Christian Fellowship. So it's intended to be a pastoral and legal guide to being a Christian in the education sector, thinking about how we can serve our school communities, how we can navigate some of these sensitive topics wisely. And we're going to try and reflect that in the offering we've got as well, in the speakers, in the seminars, and the opportunities to do some informal one anothering and fellowship as well. Very excited about that. And as we get more details, we will release them. But yeah, 10th of October, London. Save the date, please, because we want to see you there.
We want to finish by wishing you a very happy half term. Have a rest and enjoy spending more time with Jesus. And we will be doing another podcast after half term.
Yeah, have a great break and we'll see you after half term.